Hello, my name is John Bannon. I'm an attorney and philosopher. In today's video, I'm going to explain why superdeterminism destroys Immanuel Kant. Now, when I talk about superdeterminism, I mean a very unique version of superdeterminism proven by Swedish theoretical physicist Dr. Johan Hansen in 2020. You can find his proof in the published peer-reviewed physics journal, Physics Essays, Volume 33, Number 2, pages 216 to 218, June of 2020. And it's entitled Bell's Theorem and Its Tests, Proof that Nature is Superdeterministic, Not Random. So Dr. Hansen's version of superdeterminism says that we live in a predetermined static block universe without physical causation or without cause and effect in physics or probabilistic causation in physics. So essentially, it is a version of causal eliminativism. It says cause and effect isn't real. Now, with that one simple fact, you can disprove the philosophy of Immanuel Kant. And this is what they didn't teach you in college philosophy class. So I'm going to give you the 6 major points that Kant made, and then I'll show you how superdeterminism disproves them all, thus disproving the philosophy of Immanuel Kant. So Immanuel Kant came up with these 4 antinomies, and these are contradictory propositions that are intended to show you that you can't know about physical reality or the thing in itself. So Kant is using these antinomies to show you that you don't know what's going on in anything outside your own mental processes. And you can't tell because your own reasoning leads to contradictions. So the first antinomy has a thesis and an antithesis. So the first antinomy says that if the world had no beginning, then infinite regress of moments of time could not be completed. However, if the world began, then there's no reason the world would have begun at any particular moment in the empty time that preceded it. However, superdeterminism answers these contradictory statements because superdeterminism says that moving time is not real. And that's because nothing can physically cause motion without cause and effect in physics. So we live in a static block universe with a static dimension of time where nothing actually moves. Motion is an illusion of our consciousness. But in physical reality, the thing in itself, nothing actually moves. Moving time is not real. So because moving time is not real, then the first antinomy is not applicable because it only applies if there's actually moving time. The second antinomy. The second antinomy says that a simple part must lie at the heart of any composite. So, for example, anything that you say is a composite made of other things. At the heart of that composite, there must be a simple part, because how else could it be a composite made of parts if there isn't ultimately a simple part, an indivisible part? But such a simple part must occupy space. Because space is infinitely divisible, then you can always imagine dividing this simple part into smaller parts, which means there can't be a simple part. So those two states are contradictory. However, superdeterminism resolves the contradiction because superdeterminism says, look, the human conception of space, this Cartesian idea of space, is actually an aspect of the predetermined static block universe because all human thoughts are predetermined aspects of physical reality. Um, and because of that, the physical universe is the one that actually supplies the concept of Cartesian space. And that means that it isn't the result of some sort of transcendent logic only available to human beings in their brains. And therefore, since it's not the result of transcendent logic, it isn't necessarily true. So the universe can have predetermined human conceptions that are in themselves false. Um, so it is entirely possible that space is not infinitely divisible. And in fact, modern physics shows us that there is a Planck scale, which tells you that anything below the Planck scale is meaningless. So there's very good reason to believe in physics that space itself is not infinitely divisible. Therefore, you could have a simple part. All right, the third antinomy. The third antinomy says that an infinite regress of causes to be complete must have a first cause which is free. So if you think about cause and effect and you look backwards in time and a regression of causes and effects backward in time, in order for that series not to be infinite, because it wouldn't be complete if it was infinite, then it must have a first cause. But the first cause in and of itself cannot be caused by something earlier, which means it has to be free. But in a determined universe, there is no freedom. So how could there be a first cause? So there's your thesis and antithesis. However, superdeterminism uh, demonstrates that there are no causal chains in the universe because physical causation is not real. So the third antinomy um, is a non sequitur in a superdeterministic universe. All right, the fourth antinomy and final. This one says that a necessary being cannot exist. In other words, Kant is saying God cannot be real. If the being is part of the world, then the being would need a cause, like everything else in the world. But if the being is not part of the world, then the being cannot interact with the world. So, how could there be a necessary being for the world? However, superdeterminism disproves the fourth antinomy. And the reason is because superdeterminism proves that physical causation is not real. Therefore, everything in the universe does not need a cause because causation is not real. Um, Moreover, God would not need, or the necessary being, would not need to interact with the world because God atemporally created the world and every event and detail in it as a static block universe. So God would have created this whole static block universe simultaneously with every detail and event already in it. So God has no need to intervene in the world because everything he wants done by his own plan is already in it. So superdeterminism makes the fourth antinomy meaningless. All right, the final two big Kantian points. The second one is humans author morality. Now, Kant came to this conclusion because he thought, well, a human being could say to themselves, I ought to do X. But that implies that the human has the freedom to do X. Therefore, reasoning in transcendent human thinking processes proves that the human must be the first cause of his own reasoning because he has the freedom to choose or not to choose. But if he's the first cause of his own reasoning on moral issues, then he's the highest authority on moral issues because he invents them or creates them through his own freedom. Therefore, there's nothing else of a higher moral authority than one's own free choice in determining whether something's moral or not. So, uh, things like the Bible and God, they go out the window because man has the freedom to make morals. Um, but superdeterminism disproves this because superdeterminism shows that man cannot have freedom, cannot have the ability to invent his own morals, cannot be the author of morality. And that's because there is no physical causation in the universe by which man could freely choose his own morals, invent his own morals. In order to have freedom, you need to be able to cause a change to the future through your actions. But because all your actions are already predetermined in the static block universe, in the static dimension of time, then you can't have the freedom to make a decision that would change that predetermined future. It's impossible. So you can't have freedom under superdeterminism in the universe. You can't invent anything like morals because invention requires you to cause something new. But since there's no physical causation, you can't actually cause anything new, which means you can't invent morals. You can't even author your own morality because every human thought, including all human thoughts on morals, are predetermined aspects of the static block universe, which means you didn't invent any of your thoughts, which means that um, God, who has predetermined the universe to exhibit Christian morality as the predominant world religion, allows one to reasonably infer that that's what God intended our objective morality to be Christian morals, not the morals that we supposedly invent for ourselves, because that's an impossibility without cause and effect in physics. All right, finally, uh, Kant is best known really for his critique of pure reason. And what Kant is saying is that we cannot know anything outside our own independent mental processes. So he's saying that because our brains produce our thoughts and our brains are based on transcendent logic, then the product of our thoughts is a product of our human uh, conceptions. It's an our thoughts are an independent product of our human conceptions. So since it's independent, it doesn't tell you about anything outside of itself. So it can't tell you anything about the universe with true knowledge or anything metaphysical, such as does God exist or not, or what God wants. It can only tell you what human processes tell you. It's a filter that you can't obtain knowledge of the universe or the thing in itself. However, superdeterminism disproves the critique of pure reason. And the reason is because in a superdeterministic universe, every human thought is a predetermined aspect of the block universe itself. So human thoughts are appearances in physical reality in the block universe, consisting of brain particles that change position over the static dimension of time. That's where our thoughts are physically contained. And because our thoughts are a predetermined aspect of physical reality and not an independent product of our own human minds, then we can know things that are true outside ourselves because there is no outside ourselves. We are part of the universe itself. So there's nothing stopping the universe from predetermining that we know something about it or its cause or its creator God. Um, okay, I hope you learned something, and I'll give you a second to look at the board. All right, until next time, uh, take care. And you learned something that you didn't learn in philosophy class about this Enlightenment philosopher. That's pretty important. That he's wrong under superdeterminism. All right, take care.